What if I told you that Blake Lively's company Betty Buzz and her affiliate business LOL Hada are both broke? Like really broke. In fact, they were already broke before the movie, the fake campaign of lies, and everything else. Yes, because it's true. And Miss Lively's company isn't really even her business. Okay. The business is called Betty B Holdings, and it's owned by a number of investments. There is IPEN Holdings LLC, LOL Hada, that's her. Belelfer Capital Partners, Graver Fusa LLC, ACG Buzz LLC, and everyone else who has been cleared to work for this company. So, this is a conglomeration of companies and capital companies that are getting together to make this product. All of them are holders, and Blake is pretty much their face. So, the key people that manage this are Andrew Kazmowis, some guy with the last name of Cool v. Belair, and Blake Spawn. And then the talent agents of Betty Buzz are Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. She's Jody Gans. Blake and Ryan are in charge of finding new talent. This company that she's suing damages for isn't just Blake's business, it's Ryan Reynolds' company too. And the company has a morals clause. And it's interesting because it says, upon and after X, the occurrence of a moral clause termination event, the commission or the commission by Reynolds of an act, which makes a Reynolds moral clause violation as defined below. The board may by majority vote or written consent. Majority shall not include the vote or agreement of Lively and Reynolds. Remove Lively and/or Len Reynolds as applicable, as a manager to fill the vacancy made thereby, provided that such replacement manager, by the lender member, shall be subject to the prior written approval of the IP member. Each permission shall not be unreasonably withheld, delayed or conditioned as used here. The Reynolds morals clause violation happens if Reynolds commits an act or has committed an act prior to the effective date or after the effective date. It is mentioned in the last two news publications of stature and reputation similar to that of the New York Times, one of which may be the New York Times, and two justifiably shocks, insults or offends a significant portion of the community in the metropolitan area of New York or in the greater Los Angeles area, causes a material and lasting adverse effect on Reynolds' public image, or the public image of the company and/or its subsidiaries. This doesn't say that she has to commit a crime. It doesn't say that she has to even do anything that's, illegal. It simply means that if a high-profile newspaper or outlet publishes something that shocks, insults, or offends, and it damages their public image, they can be terminated, because damage to their public image impacts the business. Blake Lively had this clause in action when she made the choice to promote her alcohol line during the promotion of It Ends With Us, and her beverage line became and was under scrutiny because of her choices where she made a line of drink called Rile You Wait after the abuser in the film. She brought cans of her beverages when she was on the press tour and offered it to the people who were asking her. She had drapes and a meal offered at the after party. She used the film to make promotions that say It Ends With Buzz. And none of these helped the company or helped Blake Lively's image. Her image being tarnished means she can be fired and removed from this company. But what's really strange is that Blake is marketing this company as her own, right? She says it's her company. How many people do you think know that Ryan Reynolds is behind this company? How does Blake then claim damages for image when she's also a minority owner? She and her husband own a minority share of the company. Just to give you a sense of how much stock she has in the company, Blake owns 32% of the company. Blake and Ryan, that is, they came up with and gave $2.1 million to this business for 30% share of the company. But IPEN Holdings put in $15 million, and they only got 25%. And then another interesting thing about this contract, which it's a very long contract, and it's pretty boring, but Maximum Effort Marketing, they're a part of it as well, and some of their workers get incentive units. So they get profits and interest based on performance. So, essentially, Maximum Effort Marketing, his company, Ryan Reynolds' company, whose Blake's name is not on it, has a job within this company. So they do all the selling for them. So they have a company where Blake is saying, I'm the business owner, and the company is not owned by Blake. Lolata portrays both Blake and Ryan. Ryan's marketing comp company is a part of this, and even Ryan's business partner George Dway produced and contributed cash to this project. A lot of the people interested in this are all associated with Ryan. And Ryan and Blake are not owners in that they gave the most money. No, IPEN, the management company that's the biggest financial backer, gave $15 million, whereas Blake and Ryan came up with $2 million. But they're getting 32% or so of the total company because they're the brains. And so it's their faces that are being used, and their faces are the value to this company. But they're not coming up with the most money. The companies and their partners are saying, your face is worth this amount of money to us. And so they have a duty to their investors and to their partners that they keep a good reputation, which explains why Ryan is having a hissy fit about the marketing being completely a mess with it, ends with us, because he was in charge of that. He tied in the marketing for Betty Buzz and Betty Booze, and marketing is done by maximum effort for Betty Buzz and Betty Booze. Ryan is buying up companies where he becomes the face of it, so then this marketing business can market it. He's like building a monopoly of sorts, but he's selling you, the individual, that this is a woman-led company, when the truth is it's not. The board is almost primarily guys, and Blake is on the board with her husband for talent, and if their names go in the toilet, they can be removed, and they can lose their investment. So, interestingly, Betty B. Holdings Andrews sat down for a deposition, and he claims that he didn't become the CEO of Betty B. Holdings until 2025. And it was because the prior CEO, Nishik Gupta, made the decision to leave, and that it was supposedly an amicable split. And it says, were you at some point seeing the complaint? Were you involved in the preparation of this complaint in any way? No. What is the business of Betty B. Holdings? It's a drinks company. And can you go a little more depth into what type of beverages you're discussing? On what types of beverages? We market non-alcoholic and low-alcoholic beverage drinks. And when did the sale of the goods actually begin? In 2021. And were you selling both alcoholic and non-alcoholic goods at that point? No. Which ones were you selling at that point? Non-alcohol. And when did you start selling drink products? I believe it was 2023. And I believe you said your understanding is that Betty B. Holdings was formed in 2021. Is that right? Well, the parent company was formed in 2021. And so there's like all these different companies that they have formed and pushed together. Okay. And he said, what was the reason for forming a new company, Betty Buzz subsidiary? And he says the introduction of a new product line. He said we wanted a different entity for the alcohol versus the non-alcohol. I don't remember. To me it was just product. You have sort of the clean lines of corporate, corporate reports. Does Betty Buzz LLC have any other subsidiaries? It was the alcoholic beverage division as well. It has that and it's called BB Zip Holdings. And 2024's was a lot lower than expected. Is that right? Yes. I'm sorry, you said was a lot lower than we had projected, right? Yes. But we expected to end the year at 125,000 cases, and we initially projected 200,000 cases, correct? And then, they read despite some green shoots product market fit is unknown at scale for Buzz. What does that mean? Honestly, it says, which is if you read past this point, it says the brand has not sufficiently eroded Fever Tree and Q's market and share, who are the dominant premium mixer brands. Really, since inception, we had not gone beyond 10% share of the premium mixer space. And so we're sort of reducing the expectation on the Buzz segment going as a premium mixer. And then after 3 years in the market, we have established ourselves as number 3 in the premium mixer market and have not made sufficient inroads into the eroding market. Basically, they spent 3 years trying to build the business, and they didn't grow even before all of this happened. And it says, in other words, you're attributing the failure to erode into Fever Tree and Q's market share to just the time between August and October, are you? And he said, no, because these companies have millions of dollars more than this company does. They can't match. They don't have the cash to compete. And they didn't grow not because of a smear effort, but because they hadn't been growing and had failed to be growing for 3 years. And that's from the CEO. Okay? And then when you think of how much money this pair and Blake is saying she's lost as a result, it's ridiculous. When they started this, they were hoping that they could become $1 billion business. And they made these wild estimates of how much money people could make. And it was all speculative, which is part of the reason why they've said, listen, you're not, first of all, this company isn't just Blake's. LOL Hada is a company owned by Blake and Ryan, and it's a minor minority holder, and it can't claim damages for personal damage. So, the problem for Blake is that because she signed an agreement with them, that she wouldn't do anything to harm her reputation. She could be on the line and in trouble with their company, and they could terminate her. Part of the reason I think they sued is because they want to blame someone else for the reputational damage, so that they aren't liable to their business partners. So if they can blame Baldoni for smearing her and causing this to happen, and not blaming themselves, they can say this happened outside of I didn't offend people because I actually offended them. They were offended, and they elevated that. They created that false narrative about me, because if they find that it wasn't them that did this, they can be terminated, and they can lose the money they've invested. They could be held in breach of contract. They could be literally forced to pay damages to the company for ruining the brand. She had a duty to take care of her reputation, and she failed that duty, and she failed her partners. And so part of the lawsuit, in my opinion, isn't just about, he's mad about the marketing, but they have so much money tied up into their being the face. It's the same thing with Betty B or with the Family Hive. She has a licensing agreement where she is the talent for that company for her, Blake Brown. She didn't develop the products. She didn't formulate the products. Literally, she signed an agreement where she would be the talent. And her agreement is that she will be loaned out to them to serve as the talent, to serve as the face. And so she has a moral obligation and a responsibility to keep her image clean. And unfortunately, she didn't do that. And she acted a fool, and she bullied people. And she stole a movie when she had all of this money invested into a company. You see, Ryan and Blake didn't get into the business of selling their image until after Ryan hit it big with Deadpool, okay? And once he hit it big with Deadpool, then he was able to sell his face to, Aviation Gin and Mint Mobile and all these other companies. And he assumed he could do the same for his wife. The problem is that he and his wife made the choice, after they've invested all this money, to do the same hijinks they did before, act like bullies, and expect no one to do or be the wiser, and just cave to them. But the truth is, they failed their business partners, and they can't accept that. That's my opinion. But if you actually look at the holdings, the money they've made in the past 2 years, Betty Buzz made $0. In fact, they made negative income for 23 and 24 after introducing the alcohol lines, because they had to introduce and flush in more capital. At the end of 2023, they had a net negative business income of $446,000. And Blake and Ryan's company was paid $0. And then for 2024, they had to infuse more money into it because of alcohol. And they posted a negative $3.4 million sales loss. And again, Blake and Ryan made $0. They actually paid in and had to pay for minimum tax. Like they made no money. The company made no money. And as they said in this deposition, was the loss of income and their failure to break into the top tier the byproduct of bad publicity? And they said no. They were already losing money before that. You also learned through this that in time they were going to eventually phase out Betty Buzz because it's not profitable. After 3+ years, they aren't making any money. What they were hoping would happen is that they could elevate the brand, they bet on Blake to be able to sell the number of cases necessary to find a larger investor, like a large beverage company. Okay, which then would buy it from them and then enter into an agreement where they buy from. So Aviation Gin, for example, he finds a small company, he brings it into notoriety, and then a large beverage company ends up buying it from him, and then he gets a percentage of the amount of money that's paid, but most of it is in stock, and then it's performance-based, so they purchase on the idea that the product will perform based on the face of that person being the spokesperson. They were doing this for Blake, so what they're doing is they're trying to set this up so that a larger beverage company will buy them out. And this is how celebrities become fake billionaires, where they're like, oh, Ryan Reynolds' business was acquired by T-Mobile for $1.3 billion. And you really learned that he didn't make that much money because most of it's in stock. And then the other chunk of it is literally based upon Mint Mobile having to perform consistently for T-Mobile in order for him to make the money. And it also depends on T-Mobile stock being a certain value. So they're not making as much money as they are. They're not billionaire on paper. They're not even anywhere close to billionaire. So to sum this up, Ryan Reynolds is using his wife and her face to pose as being a female-led company, claiming to be a woman-backed company. And yet he is on the contracts with her. His marketing company is behind the marketing for these companies. His business partners are investing in these products. And he has a stake in the products as well. Blake is literally just pretending that she's the business owner. He believed he could do with Blake what he did with Aviation Gin. And he didn't, and he couldn't. And now they're on the hook, and they've let down the investors that have put in millions of dollars, rendering the company making zero money. So my thought is that the damages are going to be completely thrown away, because this company is worth nothing. They're not making money, they're losing money, they're not delivering. Her reputation's in the tank. They won't be able to prove that Blake's smear campaign caused this. And when that happens, my guess is there's going to be a split between Blake and these brands. They're going to get terminated. Really, what this lawsuit against Baldwin and for Blake and Ryan is a fight for their wealth, a fight for their careers. And they're trying to blame everyone else for their own reputations going in the toilet, so they don't have to be responsible to their investors and to their partners. And that's really the disgusting part about all of this, in my opinion, is that their business was already broke, and now they're claiming, well, we're more broke because of it. No. You're just trying to avoid the inevitable of the legal fallout with you and your business partners. And that's my opinion. Are you shocked or surprised to learn that they don't have as much money as they portray on television or in the media? I am not that surprised. So, wrapping up another phenomenal day without a crystal ball, are you surprised about the status of these companies? Essentially broke, completely broke, no money. Are you surprised that Ryan Reynolds is using his wife's space for his own financial and narcissistic purposes of allowing his marketing company to have another client? Are you shocked to learn that this company is not Blake Lively, but Blake and Ryan, and Blake is the one suing for reputational damage? What if they told you that this company is actually Blake and Ryan? Would that have made a difference? She's literally saying this is a women-owned business, and she's not running it. It's with her spouse, and it's broke, and her reputation killed the brand. But not because of Wayfair. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Bye, besties.